Welcome back, everybody, to the Below Average Joe's MMA show. I am one half of this dynamic duo. I am the Shaq to Dom's Kobe. My name's Noah Baker, coming to you from the great state of Ohio, demanding my right. Also, coming to you from the great state of Ohio. Only difference is Dom's in a basement. I am in an apartment.
Yes.
So we are high living
Yes.
over in these parts. But great to be with you, Dominic. We're here to do our recap edition of the weekend, including UFC Vegas. What was the number again, Dom?
72.
Yeah, okay, thank you. And then we'll also go over some more of that card in BKFC 41. Dominic, for the first time, checked out BKFC, so I'm very excited to hear his full detailed thoughts of the show. I tried to get it out of him yesterday. I texted in the group. Dominic was a little coy about his thoughts. He gave kind of an interesting little tidbit. He said the worst injury that I saw was Luke Rockhold losing some teeth. I think it's a success. So I don't know what that means for what he's about to say,
Yeah.
but we will find out all that. We have a couple fight announcements and much more. Dominic Salee, how are you doing? Did you have a good weekend? I saw you in the Battling for Bogey Boys out on a golf course. Dominic said, and I quote, it transports you out of Ohio as soon
Mm.
as you arrive. Explain.
Yeah, man. We traveled to a beautiful, beautiful course that we love. Honestly, it's probably mine and JP's favorite course. Branson's golfed at more places than us, but I think he really enjoys it too. It just takes you to just golf is already, I kind of view it as my escape from, I'm not on my phone that much. I'm just out with the bros having a good time. Weather's nice, at least most of the time it is. And that's what it was there. And then you just have like these aesthetic views and the animals and the wildlife. Oh, it's just beautiful. Golf's a beautiful thing, even when you suck like me. And so it was a really, really good weekend, a busy weekend, starting to get the pool opened up. It's a little murky for anyone out there that has a pool. You got to get it clean for the first week or two when you open it for the season. So we're doing all that. But now it's studio time with me and Noah. I'm doing great. How are you doing? How was your weekend?
Weekend was good, Dominic. Now, I will say, ever since I moved here, I love the area, love the new apartment, all that. Weather's been absolutely terrible. It has rained almost every day I've been here, or
Mm,
it's been cold. I don't know
mm.
what's going on with that. It's almost May.
Yeah.
Let's get. I think we just skipped spring. We went from winter to summer, basically. It didn't give much of a spring,
Mm,
so that kind of blows. But I think better days are ahead, and
uh-huh.
hopefully, I'll get to experience more of the area I live in and stuff once that happens. Got some family coming up the next couple weekends, so I'm excited to kind of show them the apartment, show them the area,
Mm-hmm.
all that. Check out the casino over in Toledo. So if any of you guys listening are going to be at the Toledo Hollywood Casino, make sure to say hi. Don't be weird. Don't be weird. I've yet to have anybody approach me that listens to the show. That would be quite a start. That would be quite a moment in
That really
our
would.
growth here.
Yeah.
But with that being said, let's hop into the main event of UFC Vegas. What was the number again?
72.
Okay, thank you. In your main event, Dominic Song Yadong picks up the fifth round TKO over Ricky Simone. It did go into the fifth round. I'm not sure. I think for Dominic, that might have surprised him a little bit. I know you did a call for a finish, which that did happen. I
Mm-hmm.
was the one that more felt like this fight was going to go into those main event rounds and maybe even a decision. So Song Yadong holds his ground, as the headline says. He was number 8 coming in. Ricky Simone looking to get the biggest win of his career at number 10 in the division. Falls short. And Dominic, you were the War Ricky guy. You were the guy in Ricky's corner on this entire, you know, climb up the ladder he's done over his last few fights. Considering that, I want to know your thoughts on Ricky's performance here. Was this a fight that Song Yadong might have surprised you positively more, or did Ricky sort of disappoint you with his performance here?
Oh man, I feel like it's almost a perfect like split of both because I definitely thought Song had a really really good performance here and I can't get over the fact that he's still only 25 years old and has a plethora of UFC experience already. And he gets a win in a UFC main event, something he wasn't able to do in his first main event slot against Corey. And for Ricky, I don't know, like he didn't look bad. Like it was a pretty competitive, relatively high level. Like it felt like a really solid fight. I mean, I get it that the action wasn't, anything to blow you away, but I enjoyed it. But I don't know. The Ricky that was there last night didn't look like the Ricky that has been tearing through these last 5 wins and even getting a couple of finishes with his hands and stuff lately. So definitely a little disappointment there as a Ricky fan specifically, but I think Song just looking as good as he did and getting a big time finish like that outweighs, I think, my negatives and disappointments from this fight. I'm curious to see kind of how you were feeling watching this one.
I was, yeah, I don't. I'm having a hard time kind of digest this one, to be honest with you, because I believed that Song Yadong would pick up a win. I thought this is sort of where Ricky's ceiling is going to be at, like that borderline top 10 guy, and such a talented division, by the way. That's not a knock on him.
Yeah.
This is the toughest division in the UFC to advance. Song Yadong, a killer. I think I come away more pleasantly surprised by Yadong, even though I expected him to win. I thought this was Ricky had his, I guess, moments where the fight was more competitive, but also Dominic, it felt like Yadong had a pretty good lead even once he
Hmm.
came time for the finish. It seemed like more often in this fight, we were standing. Yadong was able to hurt Ricky multiple times on the feet. Um, I think this was the best performance I've seen from Yadong from start to
Hmm.
finish. I don't know if
Yes.
I necessarily said this on Friday or not, but the thing with Song Yadong has been like he has won a lot of fights in the UFC against some good competition, but he has really very rarely just like had a dominant showing. And I'm not quite sure I can quite I mean this was I don't know if dominant's the right word to describe this one, but he definitely looked like he was a level above Ricky here. And that's something that I don't feel like I had seen from
Mm.
Song Yadong for the most part. Yeah, he got the first round finish of Marlon Moraes, but with Corey, like it was competitive, and Corey's one of the best guys at all of 135 pounds, but he was always a step behind. And then you look at some of his fights with like Casey Kinney.
Hmm.
Who was it that he lost to? Kyler Phillips. Like in both those fights, they're very close. Even Marlon Vera before that, like very close fights where you don't really know which direction the judges are going to go with it. So it's kind of like he's good enough to win a lot of these fights, but he'd not been showing enough to thoroughly win
Mm.
a fight from start to finish. And here he did that. I mean, he put a stamp on it with the finish in round 5, did not let it go to the judges, even though he probably could have. I come away very impressed. Again, I don't know how much it really does for him. I mean, I definitely believe that his next fight will probably be someone ranked ahead of him, which is definitely a direction you want to go. But you're right, he's still 25 years old, Dominic.
Yeah.
I feel like we could be due for another disappointing showing from him because he's still just growing so much, evolving so much with each fight that the real full potential of Song Yadong may not be realized for another 4 or 5 years, and that's okay. It's just until then, we may get these glimpses of greatness mixed in with some showings that leave us going, oh man, I really expected more from him here. That's kind of how I walk away feeling about Yadong's future. Just still optimistic, but I don't think the immediate future is clearly like I don't think the Red Sea is not parted completely to just he is a shoe in for a title shot, a shoe in to become champion. I think we still have a few more years where he's gonna have to really grind to keep himself relevant in this top 10, and then eventually the path may open up for him. Do you kind of agree with that?
Yes, I think that's a perfect description of Song, being that he's so young. Like, it's awesome he has all this experience right now, but regardless of all that experience, in terms of top level guys, there is still a bit of a gap, right? I mean, the highest level guy, and I'm saying in terms of the time that they fought, that he has faced is Corey Sandhagen, and what happened? He did lose that fight. He was competitive in it, but Corey convincingly won that fight and got the doctor stoppage finish. Yes, he beat Marlon Vera. He probably shouldn't have, and even then, that was in 2020. That's Marlon Vera that was on a tear and just lost in a number one contender fight essentially in his last outing. So I think that is a good spot. And I think, if he does keep getting better, he's with a great camp and Uriah Faber, kind of leading that charge for him um, with Alpha Male. He can become a serious, legitimate contender, but I'm not ready to just pull the trigger and say that's what's going to happen next. Kind of like what Noah said. It can in the future, 2, 3, 4 years, but in his next 2, 3 fights, I don't know. If he were to do it then, I'd be very surprised. And Noah, in terms of like what I would think could be next, personally, I love the idea of him facing a Peter Yan that's coming off of some losses. He just lost to Marab, who's now number one in the division. It seems fitting that Peter Yan should fight backward. Song should fight up. Number 8 versus number 4, Noah. Give me your thoughts on how that fight would go. Would it tickle your fancy?
Yeah, I would definitely sign up for that fight. I think Peter Yan, that's the kind of matchup you want to see him take on next. And if you're Song Yadong, that's the kind of matchup you want to see him take on next. And my thoughts on Peter Yan, Dom, I'm struggling with it because
Mm,
this skid has not been great. And you can pick holes in every loss outside of really the Marab fight, which was just such a one-sided showing.
mm-hmm.
But outside of that, you have the DQ, you have the split decision with Sean O'Malley, where at least in my opinion, Peter Yan won. But at the end of the day, the wins aren't accumulating like they were previously. So as talented as I think he does need to get back in that win column. Like he can't continuously lose fights, even if they're close and you think he won.
Mm-hmm.
He's got to be able to make a stamp and thoroughly win a fight from start to finish, like he was doing so often on his lead up to the title. Song Yadong might be the right opponent to force that out of him. I do tend to believe that his next fight may be against someone like Marlon Vera. If you've
Mm,
noticed, Marlon sort of called for that fight afterwards on Twitter. He
okay.
said, Peter's the only guy I haven't fought in the top 5, I think he said. So I could see that fight happening, but I would be very happy with Song Yadong, Peter Yan being next.
Yeah.
Anything else for Ricky Dom? Like, where does this setback sort of put him in your mind as a guy who thought, there might be some more ceiling than just where he is currently? Do you still believe he can get back to this kind of position and win a fight against a top 10 opponent and advance maybe even to like a top 5 matchup? Or has this fight set you back with where you sort of view him and his upside in this division?
Yeah, Noah, this one as a War Ricky stan definitely hurt a little for sure. And it's a good question. This spot where he's at right now, number 10, fighting number 8, I think he can manage to stay in that realm, but in terms of like putting together, another 5 fight win streak, but now to do that he'd have to beat all, very highly skilled, highly ranked opponents. That's where I might have a little bit of pause and say, okay, maybe we've kind of seen that ceiling. At the end of the day, regardless of, I think he's 30, he has had, I think actually him and Song had almost the same exact record. I think Song had one more because he was a draw and Ricky was 8-2. So he's got, now 11 fights in the company and just lost his biggest one in his first outing. Yes, he's in his prime in terms of years, but in a division like this that is only getting better and better and better. I feel like every week there's someone new that we get to talk about at 135 pounds that we're like, oh yeah, the future's bright for this division. It's hard for any of these guys to hold their spot for a long period of time. And for here in this area specifically, like 8 through 15, it's even harder. And so I'm definitely a little nervous for War Ricky and how much further he can go in this division. But I'm definitely here to ride it out. I'm here to see what he can do. Maybe, just maybe, he puts together one last big run. But I am a little hesitant, Noah.
Yeah, I sort of this might be too soon to call this, but what I kind of picture for him right now is that he's good enough to hang in this area, and therefore he almost feels destined to become like a top 10 gatekeeper. And I know gatekeeper gets kind of put as like a negative term, but no, I think he's like a great test for those guys who are good enough to be ranked, but they're unproven beyond that. You know, you saw what
Mm,
he did to Jack Shore, who looked like that guy was going to be no problem in the top 10 at some point. And because of that, Ricky's got a lot of experience. He's in his prime. He feels like a perfect guy to give that kind of test into the top 10 for some of these prospects you have on your way up. And that might lead to a tough road for Ricky, but if he wins a couple of those, then all of a sudden they're like, well, let's give him another chance against
yeah.
someone who's maybe starting to fall out of that 5 through 9 range. And for all we know, he does end up back in there. But I sort of believe right now he's kind of a good test for someone who, if they're really a top 10 guy and maybe even a top 5 guy, you have to get through Ricky on your way up.
Mm, yeah. Yeah. I like that a lot. I agree.
So, with that, Dominic, we will move on into the rest of the weekend. We will stick around with UFC Vegas. What was the one more time, Dom? What was the number again?
72.
Thank you. I might need to write that down or something. But
Yeah.
let's talk about that co-main event, Dom. Caio Bahayo, his third co-main event spot in 4 fights or something like that. He gets the second round submission over Michal Oleksiejczuk in your co-main event. Dominic, I've been kind of struggling. I like Caio Bahayo a lot. Like I think, especially at a middleweight division that needs more talent and needs fresh faces in this top
Mm,
15 and whatnot. I like the guy. I like what he brings to the table, both athletically and skill. You know, he kind of has proven with some of these decisions he's racked up that he does have a lot of skill, even if athletically he also has a lot of advantages over some of these guys, including someone like Oleg Shashuk here. But I've been having a hard time sort of reading what I believe his ceiling is. And not that I'm ever really, you never bat 1,000 when you're trying to measure these guys on their way up. But typically, after 4 fights or so in the UFC, you kind of start to figure out like, okay, this is
mm-hmm.
the kind of guy who I believe can be in, talking top 10, top 5, title
Mm-hmm.
challenger, like, or you believe, okay, this is a guy who at best they're looking at a 15 spot, but more than likely they're just kind of a guy in this, unranked
Mm-hmm.
area. But even after this win against a really good opponent and Oleg Shashuk, Dominic, I have a hard time really evaluating what I believe Bohio's upside is, his potential truly is at middleweight. Do you feel like after this fight you have a clear read on kind of where you think his ceiling is in this division?
Clear's a strong word, but maybe a little bit more clear. He got the finish I was waiting to
Mm.
see, the aggressiveness I was waiting to see from his second contender series fight when he knew he needed to go get that win to get into the UFC. I felt a little bit of that here, and I knew when this was on the ground there'd be a vast skill gap here. So I'm actually kind of surprised it took this long. But Mikel actually held his all, and he is just a really solid kickboxer, man. Like he's a dangerous opponent. You don't want to be on the feet with him for very long. But Caio held his all there, and again used his athleticism. He's built like just a statue, man. He's just chiseled out of stone. The way that he looks, his physique. He's so much stronger than a lot of these guys that he's fought thus far. And this was a big one. I think with this 4-0 record now, you have a finish. You kind of have taken gradual steps. I mean, he's beaten decent names. Yes, they don't have rankings, but I mean, even an Armand Petrosian win, Gadzi Omar Gadziev, I think at the time was looked at as a pretty solid win too. So he's getting solid wins, even though they're hard names to say and they're not ranked. But at middleweight, there's only so many of these types of fights you have to win before you get in to that top 15 or get a chance to challenge in that top 15. And I think that's where Caio is now. Top 15 has to be next. Who? I don't know. Someone back there between 12 and 15. And I believe we could be on to something here. Now, call me crazy. Talk me through this a little. I'm getting slight Andre Muniz vibes, but we've seen some weaknesses from Muniz now recently. For Caio, dare I say, I maybe think his ceiling could be higher than that of an Andre Muniz. Give me your thoughts here, Noah.
It's hard to say because this is the problem, right? Because Muniz could come out in a couple months and just like look phenomenal, and
Mm,
then all of a sudden, like we're all back on the train. But
yeah, yeah.
judging off his last fight and what we have seen previous, I think Caio has a more complete skill set. I think
Mm-hmm.
for Muniz, I don't necessarily get that same. I don't get that same comparison when I think of him, just because I think Muniz, I sort of figured was more of a. He had a very elite skill in his
Mm-hmm.
jiu-jitsu, but it was just going to be if he could develop the rest of that game over time. And when he fought Brendan Allen, it just showed that he's a little bit more behind than maybe we had hoped he'd be at this point. Now he could come out next time, look phenomenal, and then all of a sudden it's like, well, it was just a bad night at the office, maybe, and that could be in play as well. But for Caio, he sort of seems good everywhere in a lot of
Yeah.
ways. Don't get me wrong; he has his areas that he's better at than others. But with this kind of skill set, Dom, where it doesn't feel like, and we'll see once he fights better competition. I mean, Michal Oleksiejczuk is definitely a good fighter, a real good test, has big power, good stand up. But if we knew that this was sort of a bad matchup for him because he lacks in his wrestling defense, and Caio Borralho just has quite the advantage there and has a lot of physical advantages and whatnot, that speed and even, dare I say, strength, even though Oleg Shashuk might have more power shot for shot. But it'll be curious to see as Caio fights up where those weaknesses start to show. Because
Mm,
eventually I feel we'll see something. It feels like he's just kind of a pretty, I don't know if complete package is the right word, but he's got a very good base. Over time, I'm sure a weakness will start to become exposed, and it'll be about him kind of developing in that area. But that's why, again, I'm having a hard time knowing what his ceiling is. I think I'll get a better read on it once he takes that jump into the top 15. But typically by now, I just, in my head, I already have it kind of figured out. Like, oh, this is a guy who my expectation for him is top 10. With Caio, I just don't know yet. I just don't know.
mm.
If someone came to me and said, I believe Caio Bahayo can be a top 5 guy and a title challenger, I'd be like, yeah, I kind of see that too. And then if someone told me, "Oh, he's going to struggle once he fights ranked competition," I'd go, "Yeah, I could see that too." Like it's just I could you could really convince me either way right now.
Yeah, no, I think I agree. I think, and it all, I think it does come down to who that next fight could be. And maybe I'll hint at maybe what that could be here in a few minutes when we move on in the episode. I kind of had an idea come to mind, but for now, it was a good spot. Good spot for him. Again, he'll be in a co-main in his next fight, probably on another fight night, and just keep blasting up his statistics in terms of his placement on cards. Noah, where do we go next here? I'm looking at the card. This card was such a love-hate for me. Really, it had more hate than love. We'll get into that later as well. um, I mean, I guess I do just go one down to Rodolfo Vieira. Got a big time finish over Cody Brundage. Was able to survive a brutal beatdown in round number one. It got a little dicey for him. He survived the big time power. Cody kind of got a little bit tired, couldn't defend takedowns, got the submission in the second round. But that's who Rodolfo Vieira is. If he's going to beat you, he's going to submit you. And if he's going to lose, he's either going to get extremely gassed out and tired and lose a decision, or he will potentially maybe even get finished by you in the second or third round. That's kind of who he is. But he did get a second round finish here in this one. So maybe he's getting a little bit better in terms of the cardiovasculars, Noah. But again, there a lot of these fights, the problem is, yes, there were a couple good finishes. I'm talking about Vieira now, but in terms of takeaways on a card like this, there weren't as many stakes, so it's hard to just dive in deeper, Noah, with fights like this and some of the others.
Yeah, Cody Brundage is going to regret. He's going to have a few sleepless nights thinking about him jumping on that choke. I mean, that's really where it went downhill
Yeah.
for him, and I feel for the guy because if I heard he was really emotional afterwards, just left the cage after his fight. I feel for the guy because from what I was seeing all over Twitter, is this guy's apparently a pretty good dude, and um, that's just tough to have defeat kind of you snatched defeat out of the jaws of victory. It just
Mm.
it's tough
Yeah.
to be put in that
Yeah.
position. And this is again why we were both skeptical of Vieira being this big of a favorite, because yes, he's capable of doing this, and he had a clear advantage here. But also, Dominic, like, you feel like you have to sweat through everything leading up to it. Like, he's just, I don't think he's really going to ever be more than what he is right now. Like, I just think he's too limited, got too many
Mm.
holes, and um, he has an elite skill that'll get him wins over guys that he probably shouldn't. But then he's going to lose the guys who he'll be this kind of favorite over. That's just the tough thing with trying to bet for or against Vieira, is you just don't know what guy you're getting each time out.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. What for you, if you have to just name someone else, and maybe we'll say the same, but was there anybody else down this card that where you're looking at it and you had like a maybe a surprise or someone stood out to you more than others? Was there a fight even maybe that stood out to you? What do you see looking at the rest of this card for you?
That's a good question. I think a lot of directly underneath Vieira I'll probably save some of my discussion for the bet slip, but I'll give a shout out to a couple debutantes who had pretty big wins. Irina Alekseeva, the Russian Ronda, as her name is, got like the third knee bar in UFC women's history. So that was obviously a good debut for her. Me and Dominic were pretty heavy on Stephanie Egger here. And even though Irina, unfortunately for her, she missed weight by 4 pounds, which is bad. That's bad.
Yeah.
So if she can clean that
Yeah.
up and come out next time and have a similar performance, then then we can maybe talk. But until then, that's obviously going to be a tough way to debut. And then how about Marcus McGhee, Dom? Getting that submission
Yes.
finish over Journey Newson. I mean, this guy came in on like 3 days' notice. You're fighting Journey Newsom, who's been in the UFC for a little bit. Not only did he win, Dominic, but I mean, he kind of dominated this fight from start to finish. I mean, Marcus McGhee, shout out to that guy. And I loved like the way he talked on the mic afterwards, just super respectful guy, the kind of guy that I like to root for when they get this opportunity and make the most out of it. So shout out to Marcus McGhee. I thought he deserved a little bit of a shout out.
Yes, to look that good on 3 days' notice is pretty insane. He looked incredible, even made weight. I know they had to kind of make it a catch weight at 140, but this is a bantamweight now. So someone else we can add into the mix of the outside looking in this division. And I kind of wanted to point this out. No, he's got a little backing behind him. He trains with Sugar Sean O'Malley. Sean giving him some shout outs on social media last night, too. You got to think having someone that big in the space kind of giving you the high praise, letting people know about you, that may just make him rise a little bit quicker than some of these other people at 135 pounds. The dude is 7-1, all 7 wins by sub, or not by sub, by finish, I mean. And even his one loss was by finish. So the dude don't know what scorecards are. That's going to lead to some fun fights. I want to see him off of a full camp and get a real feel for how good he could be.
Yeah, I don't want to like over jump the gun and say like this guy's gonna be much of anything. For all I know, he'll never win again in the UFC. But I'm just happy to see to come in under these circumstances and just ace at the test completely. And Journey Newsom's not a guy that I had a ton of high hopes for, but he is at this point a few fight UFC veteran. Like, he's been around a while, so to come in and kind of dominate him all the way to a finish, you can't have a better debut than that. So good on him. And with that, Dominic, I think we will move to our fight announcements portion. Obviously, we'll be talking about the bet slip here in a little bit. Some more discussion. Or sorry, Dominic, I not the fight announcements. Sorry, go back. What am I doing here? I mean, I'm blanking on. We got to talk about the biggest combat sports card of the weekend, Dominic. That was none other than BKFC a 41. And specifically, we'll talk about the two fights that everybody was sort of anticipating, especially MMA fans. Co-main event, Eddie Alvarez picks up the split decision win over Chad Money Mendes. I think it was 47-46 across the board. However, two of those went to Alvarez, one went to Chad. Chad Mendes did retire afterwards, Dominic, so that's it for him. And truthfully, as goofy as it sounds, because I know we've kind of had some interest, we've had gone back and forth, especially me, on bare knuckle and BKFC. But what a way to go out! This fight was actually very entertaining from start to finish, in my opinion. I thought this was a great fight. I thought it was
Mm,
as for what BKFC probably were hoping for here. They could not have gotten more than what they got. You got two
mm,
guys who are not in their prime anymore, but still capable of fun fights and both have names to them. They came in, it was an action packed fight. It got better as it went. There was back and forth,
mm-hmm.
momentum swings, knockdowns on both sides. And then by the end of it, you didn't know who had won. And Dominic, I don't know if you were even aware of this interesting rule that BKFC has where if the fight would have been scored a draw of any sort, split draw, majority draw, whatever, unanimous draw, you get a sudden death of 6 rounds. So then you're kind of sitting there like, Eddie and Chad are kind of hugging it out after, and you're like, boys, y'all might be fighting one more round here. Like, let's not get too lovey dovey on one another. So, Dominic, I'll get your thoughts on the co-main first before we talk about the main event. Being that this was like your first real fight you got to see for BKFC, were you impressed at all?
Yeah, I thought this, especially this one with the two guys that had fizzled out, clearly not in their primes anymore, had done all they've done in MMA. You pair them up together, first off, that is good matchmaking. It is matchmaking that makes sense. Both guys looked like physical specimens last night. I'm just going to leave that where it is. And they had a really fun, scrappy, competitive fight. And both guys had some knockdowns. Honestly, to be truthful, going in, as the fight was starting, I was kind of, the more I thought about it, I'm like, why am I not leaning heavier on Eddie here? I mean, Chad is, strong, don't get me wrong, but he's always been a grappler and wrestler in MMA. Eddie Alvarez got them hands. He's the underground king, man. He's been known for having good striking. But Chad held his all and had his moments. Clearly, a split decision scorecard won in his favor. I had fun. I had fun watching this fight. I'm glad both guys probably got a bag. Chad's now, done competing. I'm sure he's still going to be around the game, whether it's this type of stuff or training, helping coach other MMA fighters. He's got a lot to offer to this sport. And Eddie, I don't know kind of what he wants to do next. Does he want to do it again? I didn't pay attention to the post fight if he said anything different, but I enjoyed this fight, Noah.
See, I'm happy to hear that, Dominic, because I thought this was actually, dare I say, it was the best fight I watched this weekend. I mean, if you go across both cards that
Yeah.
we're talking about, it was the
Yeah.
best fight of the weekend. Again, if this isn't your thing, like the bare knuckle and the fact that these guys, you see the damage that it can do to the face and whatnot, I get it. I fully get that. But in terms of like action, back and forth, two guys that I'm invested in, I mean, I couldn't have asked for more here. This could have went a lot of different ways, some of which wouldn't have been very good. And instead, you had two guys who really wanted it, who respected what they were a part of here, which is kind of a big thing, and made the most of it. And then Chad retires, so it's like kind of a nice way to go out, I guess, in the sport. Yeah, he loses, but he doesn't get like flatlined. He doesn't, get dominated. He made a very good showing, even nearly won the fight. And now him and Eddie, they said they're going to go fishing together afterwards. So I'm happy to see
Mm,
that they have built a bond off of fighting one another. Yeah, I don't know what's next for Eddie. He didn't really say much of that, but I imagine there's a good chance we could see him back in here. From what I know, pretty much all these guys that were in the co-main and main event were all like Mike Perry. Even that was the last fight of his deal with BKFC. He said afterwards. And for the other three guys, I'm pretty sure these were one fight deals. I know Chad had fought for
mm.
BKFC previously, but obviously now he's retired. For Eddie and Luke, I'm pretty sure these were one fight deals. So for all we know, Eddie's gonna use this win to kind of put himself back into like a premier MMA organization, or maybe he continues this route. And I'm here for whatever. I am fully on board with accepting BKFC as a part of my combat sports plate, if you will. Am I going to watch it as
Yeah.
much as boxing? No, or as much even as MMA? No. But it is definitely something that I value and will check out if there's fights I'm interested in on the card every time they're on. So I think for that reason, big win. You get a big probably showing in terms of a big boost in people that were watching this card. A lot of
For
attention
sure.
being brought
Yeah.
on it. And a lot of that's got to be owed to our main event, Dominic, where Mike Perry, platinum Mike Perry, TKO's the former UFC middleweight champion Luke Rockhold in round 2. Kind of a weird finish. When I say this, I'm not saying it disrespectfully, but it is what happened. I mean, Luke ultimately quit, but he quit because I believe there was a tooth issue. Like I don't know if teeth had gotten knocked out or
Mhm.
he had gotten his teeth have gotten fucked up, so he kind of waved it off. Understandable. This is a guy who's fought for titles in the UFC. He's had a great career. He's taken a lot of damage, of course, over the last few years. Like, I don't blame him for not wanting to take any more in this
Yeah.
spot. Like, I don't blame him at all. But for what we got, this was a fun fight too. The first round, both
Mhm.
guys got wobbled. Then obviously in the second round, Mike Perry with the pressure mixed with the volume, he was
Mm.
just never going away. And he was eating some big shots from
No.
Luke and just you could tell Luke was not comfortable with having Mike all up in his grill the whole time. Um, Mike Perry's the perfect representative for this organization, Dominic. And dare I say,
Yeah.
I get Mike Perry's an interesting character and he's kind of a meme at times and whatnot. But I fucking respect the hell out of him for what he's kind of built for himself here in BKFC. Don't get me wrong, he sort of fits the mold of the the UFC fighter back like when the tough boom, either right before it or right when it first happened. Like there, he sort of fits that stereotype. But MMA has just exploded and has become so much more of a mainstream sport that a lot of, even though there's still more interesting characters in MMA than there are pretty much in any other sport, it's not near as prevalent as it was back in those days. So
Mm.
for Mike to fully get to showcase who he is and to get the most out of his fighting style, Dominic, he's a problem in bare knuckle in BKFC. BKFC has built something interesting where you see the wins he's had over Luke Rockhold, and before this, he beat MVP. Two guys who, in an MMA fight,
Mhm.
if they were to stay standing the whole time, would strike circles around Mike Perry. But in this environment
Mhm.
where the ring is smaller, they start nearly face to face, and he has all of a sudden, and it really, obviously with bare knuckle, your durability becomes such a big factor in the amount of punishment you can take. Mike Perry's all of a sudden, Dom, a bubbling star. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think they even announced him as such. The ring announcer, when they were introducing both guys at the start of the fights, some sort of like combat sports star. Or I can't remember how he
Yep,
put it.
yep, that's what
And
he said.
Noah, dare I
Yep.
say, Mike Perry. Okay, yeah, I thought it was something like that. And Mike Perry is now the face of bare knuckle FC. That is the star. That is their guy. Noah said he's the perfect representative for this brand and for this sport, and he fucking absolutely is. There's no one else that's even close to representing this brand more than Mike Perry. And when you're getting Conor McGregor to acknowledge you and say, "Oh, you want me to come into the ring and face off with you just for fun? Sure, I'll do it." Noah, your tweet last night was perfect. So I'm going to stop there. Yes, guys, Conor McGregor not only was at BKFC along with Donald Cerrone, Kamaru Usman, Justin Gaethje. I think Noah's actually having a little bit of like weak regret for not going to Colorado this week, knowing he could have been there in attendance.
Yeah.
Conor McGregor in the ring with a bare knuckle belt. Tell me, what did you think? Because I felt we had entered another dimension.
I think this is the work of AI. That's what I think. I think that they once the fight ended, they had a very high level AI program come in and show this. I don't think this actually happened. But what we saw, Conor McGregor in attendance, just throwing back the proper 12 straight out of the bottle. Yeah, that really adds a lot of hope for him and Chandler to fight anytime soon. But um, he's doing that. He's having a good time, right? They mentioned, like you just said, Donald Cerrone. I think you said Justin Gaethje, Kamaru Usman, all there. Awesome stuff. You know, a lot of people, a lot of interest in this card. Mike Perry gets this big win, and then he goes, like, out of respect, he's like, man, I would love if Conor McGregor came in and faced off with me. And I was like, holy shit. I said, there's no chance Conor turns this down because he's Conor McGregor. Like, even though, is this fight ever going to happen? I would guess not. But Dominic, not only did he come into the ring, he came in with the fucking BKFC title belt already over his shoulder, faced off with Mike Perry, and you can hear the mics picking up. He's saying, "Oh, I'd fight you in a second." He's like, "Remember what Cowboy did to you? Remember what I did to Cowboy." Like, he's like really like, he kind of was like, "Oh, you're going to call me out for a face off here? Like, don't believe I won't fight you." And then, to BKFC's credit, they're like, "Holy shit, Conor McGregor is in our ring right now. We have to like make the most of this." So they get him on the microphone, ask him what he thought of the card. And Dominic, he had a glowing review for Bare Knuckle FC. Said the matchmaking and storytelling is beautiful. He loved it. He believes that it can be a big deal and would love to be a part of it. What, Dominic? What the fuck just happened? I mean, this is this is. I mean, this is like, when that picture of Kim Kardashian came out with the ass, all sticking out with the, I think it was the one with the wine glass or whatever on it, and it's broke the
Yeah.
internet or whatever.
Yeah.
This was the MMA equivalent of that. This broke the internet. Like, what the fuck happened here? I still just can't believe it happened. Obviously, I don't think much comes out of it. Our colleagues will say, or the other people in the space, over on Spin and Backfish, shout out Barstool, but they had tweeted, I already feel for the reporter who asked Dana White about this and gets completely bitched out, Dominic. Do you think Dana had a mini aneurysm when this happened?
He had to have. That was the funniest thing going around, were the memes of like, "Oh, Dana's gonna love this," and it was the picture of Connor facing off with Mike, or a side picture of Connor with the belt, and just, oh my gosh, it was a moment that honestly, it's like an all-time thing that's happened throughout our 2.5 years of doing this podcast. That's up there as like a big time crazy ass moment we've gotten to cover in this wild game that we love, and you know call me crazy. I don't think it's that wild of a possibility that Connor could be in bare knuckle one day for a fight. Could it be Mike Perry? I mean, I guess there's no one else that would make a much more fun fight than that, but I don't necessarily think he's going to do it. But he could be like a big ambassador for them. Look at like the Jake Paul thing with PFL. Connor could be like just a huge name that promotes their fights or talks about how cool it is, and then bam, you know how many followers Conor McGregor has? Some of them are going to come on over, trickle in, and buy a bare knuckle pay per view. So last night, bare knuckle saw that, and you could tell like it was completely like improv. Shout out to the ring announcer or the commentary, because he's like, Mike, 1 second, we got to get Connor real fast. Mike had just won a fight. He's like, nope, go over there real quick. We got to get Connor to talk about the brand. So I don't know what's going to happen, what could come of it, but it's only good things for BKFC.
And that cannot be overstated. The card delivered. I even watched some of the cards underneath those two. Dominic, it was fun fights throughout. Yeah, Ben
Yeah.
Rothwell got a big win on there. That was a back and forth fight that he nearly lost, but then the corner threw in the towel for the other guy. And you had a championship bout on here. Like, you had a lot of good fights. So, you brought people in with those two at the top, those two fights at the top. But if you watched enough, you got to see some of the more homegrown bare knuckle talent. And I like that bare knuckle leans in more to kind of this wackiness that is combat sports. Because, Dominic, there's a lot of wacky shit going on in
Mm-hmm.
combat sports. And instead of turning the other cheek to it, they sort of embrace it. And sometimes you do get some situations where that's not for the best. You had the guy that unfortunately passed away when he really shouldn't have been fighting, probably in bare knuckle, anyways.
Mm-hmm.
less of that, please. But also, you do get these times where they embrace some of these characters like a Mike Perry. And not only does it work, but Mike Perry's like kind of a star for bare knuckle now. And I love it. I love it for him. I love it that you have this out there, that you can continue bringing in some of these guys that want to keep fighting, but maybe their MMA career, the opportunities have sort of dried up there, and maybe they can't quite get that boxing fight they're looking for. Bare knuckle is another opportunity to make some money, that is a viable promotion, that is doing some good things, doing some interesting things. I mean, Dominic, the center of the ring had a big old OnlyFans ad
Yeah.
sitting there, and I was,
Yeah.
I was like, "Yep, this is BKFC, baby." Gonna knock any of the drug testing BKFC has because I don't know what they do, but Chad Mendez's traps had traps, so because of
Yeah.
that, if Donald Cerrone, who is admittedly on steroids, maybe he can still get a fight in BKFC. That'd be pretty cool.
Oh, it's gonna be fun to follow, Noah.
Actually, can I tell you what I think's happening next with Mike Perry? I forgot to mention this. I
Mhm.
think he's the fight that I think Mike Perry gets next, Dominic. How about Darren Till?
Ho, 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 ho. Okay. Well, Darren did get released from the UFC. I kind of forgot about that. Huh. They had kind of have a interesting relationship, to say the least. Those two guys. I am
That's
here
true.
for that. I think? Question mark. Fuck it. Let's do it.
Yeah, they could finally have that spa that they were talking
The
about way back
spa.
in the day.
Yes.
So I think that would be pretty fun. But yeah, with that, Dominic, we'll move on into the fight announcements portion. Shout out BKFC. I'm sure we'll be talking about them at some point in the future. Dominic, unfortunately, fight announcements start out on a bad note. Jack Hermansson out of his 5 round main event spot with Brendan Allen on June 3rd. But we did get a main event announcement for July 15th, the week after International Fight Week. We're looking at Rafael dos Anjos back at welterweight. He keeps bouncing back and forth, taking on a returning Vicente Luque, who's looking to get back on track after a couple deflating losses in a row for him. And then August 19th, Cody Garbrandt back against Mario Bautista. So Dominic, out of these three, kind of where are you leaning? What do you like and what do you not like? I mean, I obviously one of these is a denouncement, so but the two that were announced, what do you kind of like about them?
I go Cody Garbrandt, Mario Bautista. I think that's actually pretty fascinating matchmaking. I really enjoy watching Mario fight through his first few that he's had in the UFC. I think he could be a very he's definitely a young prospect for sure, and I'm intrigued about his future. And you're gonna fight Cody Garbrandt here. That's such a massive spot for him, and it could be something he could really capitalize on and utilize. And for Cody, say what you want about his fight with Trevin Jones, right? I always there's Trevin Jones, Trevin Giles. I think it was Trevin Jones.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Yeah. Cody looked good in that fight. He fought intelligently in that fight. So it was good to see that. Can he keep it going? Can he make some sort of run with this remaining kind of portion of his career that he's in? RDA and Luque I like, but I think I'm more excited for Garbrandt Bautista because I think it'll just be more exciting in the cage. Vicente is an absolute banger, and I love watching him. RDA is an absolute veteran of the game. You have to respect that man. But in terms of styles, I could see a world where RDA pretty convincingly controls Luque, doesn't allow Luque to let loose, kind of like how Bilal won that fight. But it is cool, and actually, I'll go to you in terms of what you think about these fights and explain to the people your message in the group chat about RDA and Luque because I don't think I could agree anymore.
I'm shocked that you are more interested in the Garbrandt Bautista fight because I think the best thing about RDA and Luque is probably going to be the actual action of the fight. I think both these guys bring it. And yes, there is the X factor of like how much is Luque recovered? Is he ever going to recover? He did have a pretty tough last couple fights, Bilal Muhammad and then who finished him after Bilal Muhammad?
Jeff Neal.
Thank you. So after that, like he's taken some time off, which is good. But going up against RDA, I think this is going to be a dogfight. If I'm being honest with you, I think the best part about this is the actual fight. Yes, it kind of deserves to be 5 rounds for that reason. But Dominic, the thing that I'm kind of struggling with is like this is a main event. It's probably going to be a great fight, and yet I find myself going, nah, like with main events, I like there to be something at stake, not for each guy's career, because there's definitely stuff at stake there every time you have a fight with both guys' careers, but more so for the division that they are in. And at welterweight, I just feel like this fight is kind of a nothing burger for the welterweight division. Like RDA has been kind of bouncing back and forth. Luque's on a 2 fight skid in need of a win. Yeah, like for either guy a win, good. They survive in advance, but it really does like nothing for the welterweight division. Am I excited for it? Am I happy it's 5 rounds? Yes, but it feels like the kind of main event that's going to need at least one more pretty important fight underneath it to really get me all that amped for the card itself. What do you think?
No, yeah, I think I'm in agreement there. Your message last night was it made me chuckle, but I was like, okay, he's actually so right though. There's not a ton at stake for the division, and that kind of stinks. And you're right. Maybe the fight could be a banger. RDA has definitely had his fair share of bangers. Luque, obviously, that's basically all he does is have bangers. I just hope it's not RDA like finding out he's stronger can clinch up Luque and like just get rid of Luque's weapons. And if he can't, then I'm with you and think this fight could be sick. And then also just quickly, because I said this earlier, maybe Caio Borralho steps in for Hermansson and fights Brendan Allen for his top 15 entry. That's all I wanted to say.
Oh, oh, okay. All right. So that's what's funny, Dominic. Caio, 3 co-main spots. And now we're kind of getting to a point where it's like, hey, you know what? I kind of think this guy is a co-main level fighter. And then they're just going to bump him up to the main event and be like, oh, we didn't have to go that far with it. But no, I that would be very interesting if he decided to step in and fight Brendan Allen. That would be enticing. I'm not sure, you know, how my excitement level would be quite yet. I need to look at the rest of that card, but
Hmm.
I'm not against those two fighting. I'm just not sure if I need to see it be 5 rounds at
Yeah,
this point.
right. I agree.
Um, with that, we'll move on to the below average bet slip, Dominic. I know you've been waiting with anticipation for this part of the show.
Hmm.
Should I just open the floor up to you? Like, should we rip the band-aid off, Dominic? Should you get this off your chest? What happened?
Yeah, I have to go first because I'm not talking very long. I'm not going through every bet like I normally would because there's nothing to fucking go through. It's plain and simple, point blank, period. I had 8 bets. I won 0. I did the reverse sweep. This is an all time worst betting I've ever had for mixed martial arts for UFC. 0-8. I am humbled. I'm defeated. And, Noah tried to cheer me up last night. And usually that is the complete opposite when it comes to sports betting. If I try and cheer up Noah, he actually sometimes gets annoyed at me trying to cheer him up. But God, I needed it last night when Noah sent a nice little message in the group chat. And I slept on it, as I said I would, because I was debating pulling it. I was debating pulling out of the bet slip for a while and taking a break. I'm going to do this. And I'm saying it now to you, to the people. I'm giving myself 3 weeks. We have 3 weeks left of UFC before there's like an off week in the entire MMA schedule. There's 288. There is UFC Charlotte, which is a really, really good fight night. And then there's an event on May 20th as well. And I think there's Bellator. There's a weekend in May where Bellator is going. I'm giving myself those 3 weeks, not necessarily to like sweep the board and have these insane, like, really awesome weeks where I'm making up all these units that I've lost, but I want to have in the green at least 2 of the 3, if not all 3. And if I don't perform well those 3 weeks, I am going to take a hiatus from the bet slip, similar to how Noah did. at the end of last year, beginning of this year, because now, when you guys see these total numbers for the year, it's very bad. And that's essentially all because of me. I am minus 17 units on the year after last night's card, betting UFC and MMA. And I can't have numbers like that affecting our shared bet slip when Noah's having a very consistently good year thus far. So I will try to be better, Noah. I got 3 weeks. If I don't, I will take a hiatus. The floor is yours.
Yeah, I don't know what to say because me and Dominic are just a lot different than when it comes to this kind of stuff. Like, truthfully, whenever I have a bad betting week, I kind of want Dom to like give me some shit and just like mess with me about it. But instead, he tries to be like overly positive, and then it just like pisses me off. That like I feel like it's like not genuine. I feel like he just is like, oh, he's mad. I just want to kind of tell him whatever he wants to hear to like make him feel better. Um, so when the roles are reversed, which has not been common because Dominic had a much better year than me last year, I find myself trying to give him the pep talk and keep him up, his head above water. But also, I know that if I were the one hearing it, it'd piss me off. But Dominic seems to believe that's what he needs to hear. So I'm not gonna, uh, I'm not gonna pile on. Um, I barely came out positive this week, so it's not like I had some great week. I had to do a live bet, 3-leg parlay, just to get myself above that Mendoza line. So I came in at like plus 0.89 units positive. Unfortunately, Dominic, where I did the best this year, like this year as a whole for MMA, I think I'm above 21 units positive. Hey, that's good, right? But since I came back to the bed slip, like it's not been as positive. Like it's more positive, but there was a couple bad weeks there too. So it's the bet slip is just this added pressure, Dominic, that it
Mm-hmm.
is the pressure cooker. For Dominic, if it does come to that where he takes a hiatus, I hope he is aware that there must be bloodshed for him to get back into the bet slip. Are you willing to do that, Dominic?
Yes, if I must face the blazing wings, I think I would be willing to do that. But hopefully not.
Right. Well said. As far as my bets here, I mean, nothing nothing too much to point out here. That parlay that really I added late that got me above zero was Song Simone over 2.5, Caio Bahia money line, and the cherry on top, Dominic Vieira Brundage over point 0.5 rounds. I was putting my life on the line with that one. But no, Vieira got fucking rocked in like the first minute. Dominic, I thought for sure when I placed this, I said there's no chance that one's gonna be the one that fucks me. Like I just knew it in my heart. I was like, this is too easy. There's no way that something's gonna happen in the first 2 minutes of that fight, and I'm just gonna be kind of a wreck, even though I understand Dominic had a worse night. But outside of that, I mean, the plus money singles I took, Egger by finish obviously did not work out. She got caught in that knee bar. Durden Johnson inside the distance felt like it had a chance at moments, but it was already a risky one. Charles Johnson, the whole flyweight under, the enemy of the flyweight under is Charles Johnson. That man just refuses to embrace the flyweight unders like the rest of his division. But Cody Durden, shout out to him. He had a pretty good performance there. Martin Boudet, money line minus 110. Him and Jake Collier, Mays, they I think I lost a couple years off my life expectancy with that fight, Dominic. I mean, that talk about a fight that was giving me Vietnam level flashbacks to Jorgen De Castro taking on whatever the fuck that guy was that he fought. Um, yeah, just not good at all. Bad fight. Bad fight. But Boudet got the win. I mean, thank God, right? Fernando Padilla plus 3.5 at minus 130. This
Mm.
was the only one I kind of thought that the odds being the way they were for this fight had me thinking something was up, because you go in here and Julian Erosa, who is a 10-fight UFC veteran, is taking on 26-year-old debutant, and Erosa was only like a minus 130, minus 140. I felt like something was up there, and it seemed like that was the case, man. Padilla fucking. I know the finish was, or the stoppage was a big question mark, but he had. I mean, I think that if that, I understand it's an early stoppage, but also if that fight continues about 20 more seconds, Arosa's face is
Mm.
just, he's face planting just out cold. I mean, he was done. But yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it. Song Yadong gets the win at minus 105. I felt like that fight was going to be closer than it ended up being. So even then, I didn't necessarily nail my analysis of it, but I like having action on main events. It worked out. But that's pretty much it, Dominic. Anything else before we move on?
No, nothing else. Get the bets away from me. I need a couple days to recover.
This is the part of the show that we only end on around here. It's a little segment we like to call closing statements. Part of the show where me and Dominic talk about anything and everything, MMA related or not. So, Dominic, do you have any closing statements to send our wonderful viewers into this week?
Just a quick question for us, a quick little boom boom challenge, because when the episode is airing on Monday, the results will be in. Game 7, 20 minutes from now on Sunday when we're recording this. Kings, Warriors, who's winning? I'm taking the Kings at home. Game 7. Ain't been in the playoffs since '06. The Sacramento faithful are going to be going nuts. I think they take down the former multi-time champions in the Kings advance. Noah, give me the pick.
When you have the experience, you have the championship pedigree they have, they're a tough team to get out of there in a 7-game series. So even on the road, I'm going to go with the Warriors.
Yeah, dude. And I know this isn't like the finals yet. It's only the first round, literally. But isn't there something special about game sevens in sports? They're just wonderful,
Yeah.
magnificent to watch.
The atmospheres are incredible. This is NBA, NHL, MLB, all the playoffs. They're incredible. And then obviously NFL playoffs are just king because
Yeah.
they're one game. It's win or lose. That's it. So they even feel more special. But yeah, I think that's pretty much it, Dominic. I don't have anything today. So my name's Noah Baker. That's Dominic Slee. We are but just two of the below average Joes, and we'll see you guys on Friday.